3. If we could take a moment to cite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In compliance with the notification requirements of Ohio's open meetings law, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted and major public media has been notified. NOACA conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. If any member feels the need to abstain from any vote due to a conflict of interest, he or she should state their intention to abstain when the matter is introduced by the chair for presentation. For the record, subsequently, that member shall not participate in any discussion of the matter for which a conflict exists. According to Robert's rules, absence from a meeting does not require a member to abstain from voting on the minutes. If a member still wishes to abstain, he or she should state their intention for the record. For the benefit of our guests from the public and the recording of this meeting, please be sure to speak into a microphone. The microphone can be turned on by using the gray button on the top of them, and they are on when the blue light is lit. Okay, first order, we have meeting minutes. If I can get a motion for the meeting minutes of October 13th, 2023 of the External Affairs Committee. Do I hear a second? Any corrections or additions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is approved. We also have meeting minutes from January 18th, 2024. I'm sorry, 19th, 2024. External Affairs Committee meeting. Any corrections or additions? Can I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is approved. Council updates. I would like to ask the chairs of each of the advisory councils to provide updates on the activities since the last meeting. It looks like none of the council chairs are here, but we do have summaries in your packet. So if you could look over those. Do we have any public comments? There are no public comments today. The chair's executive director report. Grace.
I do not have an executive director's report.
I think this is going to be an easy meeting this morning. Action items. There are no action items today. Presentation, discussion items, public affairs engagement review. Danielle.
Good morning to the chair and external affairs committee members. I have the pleasure of talking to you today to give you a little update about some of the work that we're doing in public affairs. There's no action requested, it's just for information purposes. We did come to you in January and presented the External Affairs Committee focus areas and priorities. And so this kind of just gives you a little of our quarterly update at work. So just to remind you of some of the approved 2024 focus areas, you see that we have quite a few that are on here and that even says co-lead. So it's not just public affairs activities. There are other divisions and staff throughout the agency that work on some of these focus areas. So as you see with public affairs, there's more of marketing communications and content building and brand identity, but we do help and we try to create those content and look at some of the updates that we're doing with some of our major projects and programs. So it's definitely built into a joint effort. So when we talk about the Office of Public Affairs, we're really looking at what we're responsible for, creating narratives and messages to audiences, building engagement and capacity, develop relationships and partnerships, as well as the ensuring community understanding of all of our programs, resources, and activities. This mirrors what the External Affair Charter has, and that's what we work from. And when we talk about public affairs, it's one voice and one message. We want everything to be centralized into this division so we can make sure that all of our communications from media relations, marketing, our visual digital mobilization, as well as our community affairs and what we do to seek public interaction, as well as any public comments, are all part of one voice and one message. And so when we do that, we look at defining the narrative. So defining the narrative, we're advancing NOACA's missions and goals. And this really involves all of our content marketing and communication. We look at targeting and strategic influencers, such as yourself and others and our stakeholders, to identify and cultivate relationships. And we also look at collecting data. We love the data. We're governed by data and we love it. It helps us to gauge the opinions and identify the messages and the work that we're doing so we know what we can do to improve and how to reach and engage our audiences. And it's also part of communicating with our constituents, whether it's through paid media, engagement, social media, online platforms, or even face-to-face for those traditional methods. We are always looking to ways on how to communicate with our audience. And then we also have developing and maintaining a field effort. So we're always out in the community, building partnerships. We have table events, advocacy efforts. All of that is part of our community affairs and outreach. And as you see throughout the room and when you came in, we have a lot of branding materials that we use to tell the story and the narrative. Everywhere we go, we would like to engage on not just the issue of why we're there, but also the other programs and activities that we're working on. So when we talk about public affairs, this is accomplished strategically through communicating information with a consistent voice. We look to do that through devising and deploying messages, creating those marketing campaigns, and expanding our relationships again. Build public awareness, optimizing the contents of the projects and programs that we're working on throughout the agency, and providing a multimedia experience. And when we say multimedia experience, we build a digital architect throughout all the work that we do, looking at those outputs. And we also maintain the business of public affairs on the daily activities that we need to do. And all of this is really encompassed on messaging and outreach. So we define them in two areas, communications versus marketing. And those are two different disciplines. And I know that people kind of use them together, but our actions are a little different. When we talk about purpose and message and focus, we're talking about building awareness to help achieve a mission. That's the communications value. But when we talk about the purpose, that's building a brand, attracting people to that communications. When we talk about messages, we're always about our mission, our vision, our core values of NOACA, but that in marketing revolves around promoting those services, promoting those campaigns and programs. And so we always have a very intentional purpose on how we approach our messages, our focus areas, how we deliver them on many platforms, and even part of our governance. So when we talk about that, and I mentioned the data because this is what drives the work that we do, that there's a lot of work that happens throughout the year with engagement. And so our fiscal year for 2022 to 2024, you could kind of see where we're at. PIRs are public information requests. So we have the community, members of councils and boards, committees, staff, but really our stakeholders are reaching out to us through emails, calls, hotlines, and just requests for information or requests for action for work for us to do. There's compliance portions of the work that we have, emails that are forwarded to us from stakeholders and from others who look to NOACA for answers. There are tasks that are directed to public affairs to help with all of those marketing, communications, content, capacity building, and being in the community. There's a lot of members who will ask us to participate and to come through to community events. And so with that, the director to director, those are all those campaigns and the work that the agency works on to deliver and broaden those messages throughout the community. And then we have an automated system where staff could request different information to help. And so in 2022, we had a total of 894 engagement requests. 2023 was a lot more, over 1,400. And right now in the fiscal year, we're at 981. So we still have to finish out the year, but it gives you some indication on the types of requests, the type of labor, type of work that comes through within those areas. And then 2023, we had a lot of projects that were going on. We were asking for public comments for the I-71 interchange. We were talking about the climate action plan and our climate reduction programs. And I think that that contribute to more. The more information that we have there engaging to the community, the more context we have in asking us to share information or be at the table. So again, data collection and analytics still important to us, even from Google Analytics and social media when we talk about our web. That is where our central information resides. And so what was interesting, where we're starting to look very specifically where those organic searches are coming from, most of them are desktop. So we need to look a little further. You know, I would think that the mobile devices would have been higher. But that sort of says to us about if there's desktop, is it more of our stakeholders? Is it a business community? Is it an older crowd? We're looking and diving into those to see more demographics on who they are. And then when we look at mobile and our tablets and on the go, so we're looking at like, what are we doing wrong or what can we do to improve to make sure that there's on the go information that people could click to it and readily get information about the work that we're doing. So to give you an example of important data, this is just part of an organic search. So if someone goes to our website, they can actually go into the search engine, and we have up to like a week organic searches, over 3,600 visitors to the site. The highest that we've had was close to 18,000, the lowest about 1,200, but consistent total users is about 3,600. And they're clicking on home on our homepage, but they're asking about in the search engine, downtown Cleveland. They're asking about the 5310 program, the electric vehicle charging stations, jobs, staff, our brownfield remediation program, the IIJA, and our OWP. So we thought that's interesting data. So we know that if this is where people are asking and looking for questions, we have to redefine our focus for the user experience. We have to make sure that we have updated information, and it's a coordinated effort with just us and staff to make sure that we're on top of the information that people are looking for and requesting. So a lot of positive outputs in regards to all of this. We've had more than 152 media calls in our fiscal year. We've had over 1 million impressions from our social media and our shared web activities. And then even our paid advertisements. We, in this fiscal year, had 2 advertising campaigns, which I'll talk to you shortly about, that really expanded our digital marketing portfolio and increasing our collateral material. So you see a lot of the banners around the room, but everything that we do from this digital architect is also tangible too. You know, we have postcards, we have interactive kiosks and libraries. We're trying to reach the masses. and trying to really look at the content and match it to targeted audiences. And I'm always going to throw that in. I think that everyone knows that we have an award and we came third place. So we're trying to be first place in our next fiscal year, but we're very, very proud of that. So when we talk about that and what we're doing, these are marketing drivers. Like, what are we putting out there? So we do have that we use with our social media and interchangeably with our ENEO 2050, our long range plan. We have 3 videos that we post. We have My Mixer, which is a public engagement platform where people use. So if we have certain information that we want people to go to, we send out the videos and we talk about that. We have an animated video for climate action planning for public involvement, which we're very proud of. We have a podcast. The podcast was developed specifically for the ENEO 2050 Long Range Plan. We will be revisiting that as we start updating that plan. So you'll see more on that, the collateral material with all of our plan reports. We looked at just not posting it, but how do we carry the message of what it is? Why should people read it? Where should it be posted? Who do we need to create social media kits to help us get that information and those impressions to travel? And I mentioned the interactive kiosks. We have 2, but the last time we used it was for the climate action planning, and we had 15 libraries that worked with us. And what was interesting is that it was heavily used to click on information about NOACA, but the intent was for them to take the survey. And I think we had 1 survey. And so that wasn't good. So we have to look at, how do we invite people to the table to talk about it? And maybe that marketing driver wasn't there. Maybe we need it to be there. Maybe we need to have something surrounded. But those are the types of data that helps us look at how are we marketing and how are we building content for our visitors and our users. So we will be looking at radio ads for our next fiscal year. I'll talk a little briefly about the billboards. We have a whole OWP plan that has many projects that are starting to create calendar of events and see how we could expand messages from there. And then we have websites from NOACA to Hyperloop to our long range plan. These are tools for engagement for audience reach. So we need to expand that with more cross-promotional and announcements that are connected, and then our marketing assets. Another great thing that we did, we wanted to broaden our marketing appeal, and so that we retain a media partner with Fox 8 News. One of the first campaigns we work on was the Northeast Ohio Loves Transit Challenge in February. And this is really good because they have over 1 million users on their Facebook page, and they were able to get a lot of information out for us, where there was over 52,000 impressions. It reached 30,000 people, and the engagement was 3,200. So they were sharing, they were liking the work that we were doing, and we actually saw it was probably about a little less than 8% that actually redirected, went to our website. So those are the types of things that we want. We want to, some people may know about NOACA, but we want to make sure that those who don't, we're trying to reach them as well. And what was great about this partnership is that we have other media outlets who are calling us. We actually have 2 now that want to see what they could do to partner with us. So we're all for that. So the little thing about the billboard, so we did upgrade and expanded our look and feel in our brand with a new logo. And so when we had this campaign, we had over 980,000 impressions. And so this was in 3 months' time at 10 static locations for the billboards, which was great for a campaign. Which is great now is that we're still expanding that brand and that look and feel, which we call a search engine campaign about NOACA. So since March, we've had over 1 million impressions. And what's great about this is that there's only 2 static, but there's 10 digital sites. So those digital sites are picked up at other locations and other direct and redirected sites that are part of the campaign. And so now it's reaching even more. And I can't wait to see the data that comes back at how many are actually clicking organically and redirecting to our website for information. So there's 5 sets of messages each month. The campaign runs until June. And these are some of the messages. You know, what's a metropolitan planning organization? Visit NOACA.org, agency that builds regional community connections, regional electric vehicle charging station locations. And so we could look at the analytics and the data on each page that is associated with the messages. And these are some of the messages and upcoming ones that we would have. So we're excited about that. Even the advertising company said that, and they're always calling and sending more and more information and clicks because they see the movement. And that is what we wanted with this campaign. So other campaigns is the Ride Share and the Vanpool program, and then the Commuter Choice Awards, which begins June 1st. And so we have this information that's out there. Our relationship and media partner already has this information. And there's other types of campaigns that will be running for the month of May, National Bike Month. We have our carbon-free challenge and air quality awareness week. So all of that would be cross-marketed together along with these campaigns. So another campaign that you've heard about, and we have not started, but we've actually built the platform, is the Irish Town Bend, and supportirishtownbend.com is where you go and find more information. And so we'll be happy to, at the next meeting, show some of the progress that we've made and some of the marketing that we will be doing around it. And some campaigns coming up in the next fiscal year, so No Idling campaign, our Priority Climate Action Plan that we are working with our partners at the City of Cleveland. You see some of the infographics that are there is some of the accomplishments that happen with the work that just NOACA did in our planning activities. And also our ENEO 2050, which we're calling Plus. So this is looking at what we've done with our ENEO 2050, our implementation, and what has changed, and looking at the future of this long-range plan. So one of the things that I wanted to ask the External Affairs Committee is some feedback. One of the priorities and focus areas is planning for community forums. So we want to build awareness and advocacy around our priority projects and programs. And so we would like to do 3, one this October and 2 next year. So we would like to seek suggestions for topics or anything of interest and priority that we should consider. And I can answer any other questions that you have in regards to the presentation.
Thank you, Danielle. Any questions for Danielle? This is something in a discussion for us to really think about the community outreach here. So we could put our heads together and come up with some ideas. It'd be great.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Danielle. It's a ton of work. I just wanted to pick up on the community forums because obviously the opportunity to engage and have a two-way conversation,
Right.
that's the key.
That's the key.
That's the key. And so you're focused on that with the forums?
Yes.
Okay. Talk more about that and what you'd like to get out of that.
We would really like to look at the work that we're doing. There's so many things that we're doing in the OWP, but with some of even the campaigns coming up with the ENEO 2050 plus, we want to just really gauge you so we could see what are some priorities that you believe that we should be concentrating on. So we could build a campaign, but also build a presence within a community where we can get feedback, where we're talking about it and developing focus groups throughout the communities. And we're talking about placing them in every county. what we would like to do is with those discussions, use some of those topics with our podcast, use some of those topics with our lunch and learn, and leverage that so we can make sure that those messages are constantly being explored. But these community forums are really traditional, they're organic, they're in places where people are and want to talk about it, that are impacted by the programs that we would like to, is that?
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Grace?
Has anyone seen the billboards? Who's seen them? Okay, we got to let people know where they are.
I can.
I'm guessing there's like 2 per county. Is there 10 of them?
How many of there are there?
There are 12, there's 10 that are digital, and then we have 2 that are static, but I could provide where they're located.
Thank you.
But I would just throw out on the forums, to start with what the community's interested in as opposed to what NOAC is interested in.
That's a good
You know
idea.
what I'm saying? And then tailor that to the needs. And obviously the mayors are much more attuned to what their specific communities are interested in. But, it's a forum for folks to connect. And so they shouldn't have to work to make that connection. You know what I'm saying?
That makes sense.
I would also add that, there's a lot of new mayors after an election cycle that don't even know what NOAC is.
Right?
So the reach to them is important to see what they get benefit as a community. I know when I started as mayor, Grace came to see me. There's that personal one-on-one and to know.
Mhm.
So if they do it from a local leader, one of us, it may mean a lot more from us.
Okay.
Question.
Dale?
Is the intention that the community forums would have a single topic focus, or is it gonna be broader than that?
I definitely feel like it has to be broader. And for me, we always want to know the pulse of the community. Um, Even when we go out in the community, it's always this intentional of what the work that we have. But we are in positions that we don't know how many people know who NOACA is, what work that we do. So it is more of a NOACA one-on-one. But I believe that we still have to go in to talk about issues that we know are going to impact them with the programs that we do. So I think it's a dual, but definitely broaden and not just one topic.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Danielle, for the presentation. Are the planning community forums really focused on citizens or residents, or is your community audience more of a professional audience?
It's really beyond our stakeholders. I think that we're trying to build capacity. So it's our stakeholders. We're hoping that they're helping us within their communities. So it's not just organizations. We're operating with 5 counties. So we want to look at each county, and each county priorities could be very different. So I think that we need to be very intentional of where we go, who we're talking to, and it's open community forum. So it's not just targeted to organizations. I think that if we targeted our stakeholders and our partners to help us with it, I think that we reach more people. So I think it just needs to be very intentional, but it's just community focus. We haven't defined our target. I think we need to look at what we want to talk about to really start defining those targets. But for me, I think it's an opportunity for everyone to find out who we are and focus on what's happening in each county, which could be different, and start honing into those. And I think we could build more of a target and mapping our content to that segmentation.
Anybody else?
Good morning. Thank you again for the presentation. Kind of what I'm picking up in the discussion, it seems like the audience for the forums is mostly residents or broader community who may not know what NOACA does. And the goals would be to share some applicable programs to them and also take input to inform NOACA's work. And I think if we can identify, well, I guess first, does that seem right?
I think that those are feasible. I think that this is the time to kind of talk about it. So the feedback and suggestions are good. So I won't say this is defined, this is definitely what we're going to do, but I think that we need to just listen to the feedback to see what would be best approach for us. But it is community-wide and it is a target. A lot of times for us, we have programs and we impact the community, but then it's turned over and NOACA's voice is gone.
Okay.
So I think that there needs to be a connection of looking at, one, the type of work that we do and the impacts that we have within the community, and stakeholders impact, residents impact. I think it needs to look at how everyone is impacted and affected by not just the work, but the need. So I definitely feel that that is a focus, but I think that we could build upon all of it.
Okay, I appreciate Kyle's suggestion to talk about what is of interest to the community and kind of
Mhm.
solicit that. I also think it's really important that there is a productive avenue for input. So if people are coming to a meeting, giving comment, that there is a place for them to be able to see that in NOACA's work going forward. And so trying to find out what community interests are, but connecting those to the work that NOACA does and planning ahead of time and the questions we're asking, the topics we're
Mhm.
looking on, people's ability to see that input moving forward, I
Mhm.
think is really important to maintaining their engagement and building
Mhm.
trust and that relationship moving forward. I also think if we're hoping to spread awareness, people who don't know anything about NOACA are not likely to just decide to go to a community forum about NOACA.
Right.
And so I think we can really be strategic about how we're targeting the people that we want to come, how we're designing a session that feels beneficial to them and interesting to them to get them to come to it. I also found some of your metrics very interesting, and I would say I don't think it's a bad thing that NOACA's resources are mostly accessed via desktop. There are certain things that are very public facing that are resources available to people that we want to promote and for people to know they can get to on the website. But there are also a lot of really strong technical resources available. This is an organization that mostly serves communities and professionals in those communities. And I don't think we should feel bad about that. And the fact that most people access it from their desks at work is okay, given the work that we do and the quality of resources that are available in the intended audience. So I guess I just think we can get a little bit more clear about what we have to offer, who we're offering it to, and then the strategies around continuing to improve those relationships and refine that ability to give input in those different audiences and different strategies.
Thank you.
Grace?
Yeah, thank you all for your comments. It's very much appreciated. I think another way to think about the work that we do in public affairs, and it's building on your comments, Callie, is that we've got really two audiences. One are the professional stakeholders, the planners, the communities that we work with, and the other is the general public. And in some ways, they have very similar ways to reach them. In some ways, they're very, very different. And when it comes to the public, and Danielle talks about capacity building, we want people to know who we are so that when we send them a survey, they're likely to fill it out. When they get the household travel survey, they know it's not a fraud. Which I've gotten lots of questions about that. They know what it is and they're interested in helping us do that. The long range plan, we're about to kick off the update to the long range plan. We're going to have some outwardly facing community engagement programs. We want people to know who we are and to take interest in that. But we never want to lose sight that all of you and your agencies, your communities, in terms of the elected officials, the planners are a big part of our audience. And so we really have both of those that we're trying to work with.
Anybody else? Any other comments? Thank you, Danielle.
Okay, thank you.
The legislative agenda quarterly status, Bev?
Good morning to the chair and to members of the committee. Bev Bertzloff. Going to give you a update on our legislative agenda and what we've been doing over the last quarter since you last met. No action is requested and no previous action. So as always, quick reminder that our legislative agenda is always based in our or the legislative work we do is always based in our board-approved federal and state legislative agenda that the board approves every December, sometimes with minor updates. But it's basically a statement of our highest priorities, which don't change too very much from year to year. So we have the federal priorities to strengthen the MPO's local control of core transportation programs, promote asset management as a funding priority, and incorporate safety, sustainability, multimodalism, climate resilience, and economic development in planning and funding. And on the state side, we say improve the region's rate of return from state allocated funds to meet regional asset management needs, and advocate for the inclusion of multimodal transportation within state programs and funding. And then to get a little more detailed, a little more in the weeds, we also create this other document, and it's a two-sided document with our federal initiatives for action and our state initiatives for action. And this document really talks about how we will put those priorities in the legislative agenda into action. And this changes from time to time based on what's happening in the legislatures at the federal and state level, what the issues are that are being, in the public forum that are being discussed, what we're working on, what we're focused on. So I'll start with the federal initiatives for action. And I'll just go through some of the ones that we've been more active on recently. This one's always a big one. Coordinate a regional approach to maximize the impact of IIJA federal transportation funding on Northeast Ohio. Of course, IIJA is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And as you all know, we created a strategy a couple years ago, and now we're implementing it to coordinate all of these various funding opportunities that came out of that new federal law. It created dozens and dozens of new discretionary grant programs. And rather than just making, having our region participate or apply for those programs in without a plan, we created a plan. We created a strategy to make it, to coordinate and make sure that our region is working together and speaking with one voice as to what our priorities are, to bring back more funding to Northeast Ohio, and also to make sure that there is an applicant for almost every funding opportunity that opens up. And that's been happening. We monitor carefully every funding opportunity, and we go back to our strategy and see who's slotted to apply for that particular application, and we make sure someone applies. And if the original applicant isn't interested, then we move on to who we have listed next in the strategy. So again, two ways that we work to increase funding to the region. We sometimes apply for funding ourselves as NOACA, and sometimes we just coordinate and support these grant applications that are submitted by our communities and our stakeholders. Just a few recent grant awards that have come back to Northeast Ohio. $700,000 was recently announced to GCRTA for some transit-oriented development planning for the Lorraine Avenue corridor. So that was exciting news. A really big grant, $7 million to Cuyahoga County for the Detroit Superior Bridge Sky Park. And of course, NOACA recently won $15 million for an EV charging program through the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Program. This chart shows some applications. Sorry if it's a little hard to read. I tried to fit it all in one slide. But these are some pending applications that we've supported with letters of support and that we continue to advocate for. So you can see there's quite a few pending applications just from our region for all these various grant programs. Also in the area of bringing funding to the region, NOACA did apply last year for some earmarks through the congressional earmark process, and 2 of our proposals were approved. Representative Bob Latta and Senator Sherrod Brown supported a couple of our proposals for $2 million for Sugar Ridge Road rehab in North Ridgeville and $1.28 million for East Broad Street Bridge rehabilitation in the city of Elyria. So recently earmarks opened for fiscal year 2025. NOACA is not applying this year for those earmarks, but we've been supporting numerous entities who are applying. So we've focused our effort more on supporting all of our communities applying for those earmarks. And here's some of the ones that we're supporting and that we've submitted letters for and that we will continue to advocate with our legislators for. So another one of our initiatives is to encourage federal support for making Greater Cleveland a significant hub on the passenger rail network. So as you all recall, I guess it was in 22, the Federal Railroad Administration opened up their applications for the Corridor Identification and Development Program. And that was to where the FRA encouraged proposals for state-supported routes that they would then support with funding and technical assistance to move those forward to advance those projects. So not necessarily, this is different than the long distance routes that Amtrak runs. These would be basically new routes within state, mostly within states, some are interstate, but that the states would support and fund to some extent. Several routes in Ohio were chosen. NOACA had submitted several proposals. Ours, unfortunately, were not chosen, but we're excited that 4 were chosen in our state. One of those is the very well-known 3Cs+D, which goes from Cleveland to Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati. So, and you can see a couple others. Another one that impacts Cleveland is Cleveland to Toledo to Detroit. And those 2 that I just mentioned were proposed by the state of Ohio. So we will be working, supporting those proposals and hoping that those advance forward. In addition, we hosted a meeting in our offices back in January. That was, we worked with All Aboard Ohio, which is a statewide rail advocacy organization, and they were doing a series of whistle-stop tour public meetings to talk about the economic impact of expanding passenger rail. And so we hosted one of those meetings here. Some of you attended. Now, in addition to those state-supported routes through the Corridor ID program, the Federal Railroad Administration has also simultaneously conducting a study on long-distance routes. Those would be Amtrak routes. And basically, they wanted to look at what routes should either be newly created or maybe recreated, routes that have been discontinued that used to operate in the past and that we could bring back. So they did this study and they came out with this draft of proposed routes that they recommended. So here's a little bit more of a close-up that shows, Ohio and the eastern part of the country. One of the routes they proposed is a north-south route that doesn't currently exist, to go from Detroit and then down to Columbus and then all the way down to New Orleans. So NOACA has recommended or suggested that that route be tweaked and instead go Detroit to Toledo, over to Cleveland, where they would pick up a whole new market of riders, and then down to Columbus, Cincinnati, and on down to New Orleans. And I know we put out an action alert at one point and asked the board to weigh in on that. I know many of you did, and we very much appreciate that, because it was one of those things where FRA was looking for input, looking for public comment, and we think it makes a difference the more they hear from us in Cleveland. Another advantage of them, if they made this change to this route, would be that in addition to they would pick up all these, the riders in the Cleveland and Northeast Ohio market, but it would also probably significantly reduce costs for the state of Ohio if the feds decided to invest in that as a long distance route. It would definitely help Ohio, because a lot of it would track the 3C+D route. So there would be substantial benefit to our region and to the state.
If I may add, they've just announced the next meeting of the working group, which I'm a part of, and that is now June 5th. So we should know by June 5th whether or not they've taken our suggestion to go from Detroit to Cleveland as opposed to directly to Columbus.
That's great. Thank you.
I also want to thank the city of Cleveland, because I know that the mayor's office did submit comments, and a lot of you submitted comments, but particularly I think the mayor's office picked up the phone. So thank you.
Yeah, and so we really appreciate when you all reach out like that, and we every so often we do an action alert like that where something is immediate, urgent, and we try to make it easy. Usually we'll give you the text to copy and paste, but we really appreciate that. I think the more they hear from us and know that it's important to us, the more that will help our chances. Also just wanted to mention that the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad Extension Feasibility Study is ongoing. So that's another rail initiative. That would, of course, extend the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad from its current northern terminus at Independence up to downtown Cleveland.
That was kicked off in February, and we anticipate having it completed by the end of the year.
Another initiative on that Initiatives for Action, again, still on the federal side, is to maximize funding opportunities through the Inflation Reduction Act to pursue regional climate pollution reduction goals. So as you know, all know, the Inflation Reduction Act was enacted and includes a great deal of funding for pollution reduction, and in particular for, it includes a program called the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, CPRG. So through that program, regions could apply for funding to do a climate action plan. And so in our case, NOACA, partnering with the city of Cleveland, did apply and received $1 million to prepare a priority climate action plan. That was the first step, and that had to be submitted by March 1st. And then there will be a comprehensive climate action plan, more extensive, more detailed, and that's due summer of next year, 2025. In the meantime, they opened up the opportunity for applications for funding to implement the measures in your priority climate action plan. So, and the deadline for that was this past April 1st. So just a little over a week ago. So for these implementation grants to receive funding through this program, any application had to be consistent with the measures in our priority climate action plan. And the funding request had to fall into one of 5 funding tiers, as you can see on the chart. This graphic represents the priority climate action plan measures that we put forth in our priority climate action plan. So things like clean electricity, building efficiency, green steel production, vehicle miles traveled reduction, light duty vehicle electrification, heavy duty vehicle electrification, refrigerants capture, solid waste diversion, nature-based solutions, and agriculture actions. So 2 projects, sorry, I'm losing my voice here, ended up being submitted for Northeast Ohio. One was submitted by NOACA and the city of Cleveland. We submitted a joint application that we titled Reclaiming the Forest City, Northeast Ohio Complete and Green Streets Program. We were in the lowest tier. We asked for the $9.9 million for our project. And then another application was submitted, and that was put together by Cuyahoga County, the city of Cleveland, and the city of Painesville. And that was entitled Municipal Empowerment for Clean Energy and Conservation. And that was in that second highest tier, Tier B. And NOACA supported that application with a strong letter of support. So I'll talk mostly about the application that we submitted. It included a request for $7 million for e-bike rebates throughout the region. So we would be partnering with Bike Cleveland, which is a local advocacy organization, and set up a program to issue e-bike rebates for residents of the region. 1.9 million would go to a regional reforestation project, and for that we're partnering with the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. And then there was $1 million for NOACA's to implement a Complete and Green Streets Fund, which is consistent with the NOACA board's 2020 Complete and Green Streets policy that the board enacted, or the board passed. And these might seem like these might seem like projects that you wouldn't think fit together, but the more when we started to put together this plan, we started to think about what would entice people to want to engage in multimodal transportation, maybe get out of their cars once in a while. And one of the things that, you know, we've heard repeatedly is that people like greenery, people want to be able to walk or ride a bike or ride an e-bike in an environment that is more comfortable, that is more near nature, near trees, that provide cooling. So we decided they made sense to put together in one application. For the e-bike rebates, they would be $400 for market value e-bike rebate. For a cargo e-bike rebate, $900. Then you can see that there are higher rebates for low-income individuals, and for adaptive e-bikes for those with a disability, and then larger rebates for e-bikes purchased from DBEs or retailers in low-income disadvantaged community census tracts. And then just a brief note on the other application. Again, NOACA wasn't part of this, but it's the Municipal Empowerment for Clean Energy and Conservation. The request was for $129 million to develop utility-scale solar energy for Cleveland Public Power, Cuyahoga Green Energy, and Painesville Muni Electric. It would replace the Painesville coal-fired plants. It includes solar arrays in Brooklyn, Brook Park, Cuyahoga Heights, Garfield Heights, and Old Brooklyn. And it includes some nature-based solutions in Painesville. So moving on to another federal initiative, pursue initiatives and funding to implement NOACA's comprehensive economic development strategy. So again, NOACA had applied and received approval from the Economic Development Administration, which is part of the Department of Commerce, for a comprehensive economic development strategy for Northeast Ohio, for the region. And so we have, that strategy's been approved. We've now applied to become a formal economic development district. And what that does is makes our communities more eligible for funding that is put out there by the EDA. So for example, here are a couple recent awards, $75,000 to Avon Lake to create a comprehensive recovery and resilience plan. 4.2 million, I think this was awarded about a year ago. They just did, I think, a ribbon cutting for Lakeland Community College, received funding for an industrial skill training center for advanced manufacturing. And a lot of these funds are available to communities that have a SEDS, a comprehensive economic development strategy. So we're supporting proposals, and we encourage our communities to look at the EDA, look at funding opportunities, and if you decide to apply, let NOACA know. And we do support those proposals. Just a few other pieces of legislation we're tracking right now. Again, the Economic Development Administration that I was just referring to, it is up for reauthorization. We're tracking the FY25 budget and appropriations and starting to talk already about the next surface transportation reauthorization bill. Next week, we'll be in DC meeting with our congressional delegation and their staffs to talk about some of these priorities and some of these funding opportunities. So we'll be carrying this message to Capitol Hill. And then on the state side, I would mention that in March, some of you attended. We had our 2024 legislative meet and greet on March 8th before the board meeting with our state legislators, and we had several in attendance. So talking about some of the initiatives, one of our state initiatives is to oppose the suspension of Ohio's 2019 gas tax increase. We had supported the governor's proposal to increase the gas tax. There are continued efforts to roll it back. Right now, there's Senate Bill 48 would reduce the gas tax on diesel. And so we are opposing that. Another initiative, advocate for increased funding for transit in Ohio. And we work with our partners throughout Ohio, especially every 2 years when the transportation budget comes up. The biennial transportation budget, we advocate strongly for increased transit funding in that budget. These two initiatives, they're separate but somewhat related. Advocate for an equitable return of state transportation dollars to Northeast Ohio. That one really has to do with the formulas that are used that ODOT creates or that the state has in place, I guess, that return funding to the various counties and communities throughout Ohio. We believe that those formulas shortchange our region. And another initiative is to encourage comprehensive and equitable maintenance of national highway system routes in Ohio. One example I would mention is there's a bill right now, House Bill 370, that would expand ODOT maintenance duties in villages. And we have always said that all communities, regardless of size, should be treated equitably. So whether you're a township, a village, a city, there should be no difference in how ODOT maintains like state highways once they enter your communities. So we have asked our legislators to look at that and think about whether they, could propose expanding that. Another initiative, support proposals to increase transportation safety and reduce distracted driving. And of course, we did support the governor's distracted driving proposal, which has now become law. The hands-free law that says you, except with some very limited, in some limited circumstances, you can't have your phone in your hand while you're driving. We will be looking at some other issues. I wanted to kind of pause here and open this to discussion. The Governor DeWine, I don't know if you saw, but on Wednesday, he did his State of the State address. And one of the things he's proposing is that we have a primary seatbelt law. So right now, if you're stopped for another driving offense, you can be cited for not wearing a seatbelt. What the governor is proposing is that drivers could be stopped if an officer notices that they're not wearing a seatbelt. The governor says that Ohio ranks 40th for seatbelt use. So he's proposing to make this a primary offense. So I'm kind of, I'm looking to the committee to give guidance here to NOACA on whether this is something that you think that we should support. And another issue that's arisen, there's a new Ohio Road Safety Coalition that's forming with some transportation safety advocates from throughout the state to address the rising traffic deaths in Ohio. One of the things they're looking at is perhaps advocating for increased local control over speed limits within your, corporate limits to protect drivers, pedestrians, and bicyclists. So looking for feedback here from, this committee, one of the things, what we look to you for is to give us guidance on what our advocacy agenda should look like and whether these are things that you think we should be supporting actively. I'll open it up here if anyone has any thoughts.
Any comments? Kelly?
Thank you for the comprehensive work and the updates. Just on the topic of seatbelt use, I would say that I would love to work with you on supporting efforts to encourage and enforce seatbelt use in the state. In our Vision Zero work in Cleveland, looking at contributing factors to serious and fatal crashes, seatbelt use continued to come up as a major contributing factor, as I think we would all expect. And, in that work, sometimes it's surprising how much the basics can really make a difference in how much we need to drill down on those basics. So happy to provide the data that we have that support that need and work with you in any way to support state level emphasis on that.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Bev, for the overview. I would add, at Cuyahoga County, we've been looking more carefully at our serious injury and fatality road safety statistics. And one of the items that we learned is that relative to peer counties, Cuyahoga County is in the bottom 3 for roadway fatalities. So it's a topic that's high on our radars at the moment, and would love to see the pursuit of the or support NOACA and work together on the speed limit work.
Thank you for that.
To be honest with you, I didn't know that Ohio was not a state that you pulled over just for not having a seatbelt. I know the seatbelt law has been in since 1986, and it's kind of shocking to me. But I also believe in our local communities, we see what's happening in law enforcement. The shortage of law enforcement is how do we enforce traffic laws when we need those officers and to do the much more serious crimes. So I know there's a number of statewide grants to focus on speed and things like that. I see it on Route 2, Route 90 in Lake County. So maybe that's a way to get some focus on that. I know there's not a huge appetite for traffic cameras or speed cameras, but I think have limited resources people wise, and that should maintain, I think, a focus for all of our communities.
So as a former criminal defense attorney, I just have some reservations about anything that might cause the police to have a pretext to pull someone over for an alleged seatbelt violation and then turn it into some other type of get out of the car, search, so on and so forth. So I think we have to be very careful when we want to protect people, but yet sometimes these laws turn into pretexts for expanded investigations. So I just think we need to be careful and remember that, There have been times in our history when people have been pulled over for pretexts, and it's turned into a bad situation for certain members of our community. So just my thoughts.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments from the mayor. The governor's proposal is not new. Back when I was in the legislature from like '03 to 2011, this proposal has come up a number of times. And I think Jack's point is one reason why the legislature has never passed it or enacted on it. And I think even this morning, I didn't click on it, but saw a headline about the lack of an appetite from the legislature on this proposal. So I'm all about advocacy for wearing seatbelt, encourage the use on that, but I would agree with the mayor.
Anybody else? Grace?
Yeah, I'd like a little further feedback on the speed limit. Since we are being asked to join this coalition, I think it's really important for us before we make that decision to hear from the mayors. And so, you know, we'd like some more guidance on, is that something that is helpful to you?
I, for one, would like to see driver training increased. I don't know if, maybe just because I'm old, that I see the skill of driver and what they have to do nowadays is greatly decreased. I see a lot of people not getting their driver's license till they're older, and they forego a lot of the testing and road stuff. I think we've lost a lot there. I don't know if that's something we look at statewide to fund. Before you get your license, you have to, you know, I had to parallel park. I still know how to parallel park. I don't know anybody nowadays that can do it without a camera in their car, but those are skills that I think we're lacking. I see speeding, you just, you know, if you're not going 70, 75 on the freeway, you're getting passed. But there's the safety portion should be a big part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, one problem we have our own police department in our township, and we have a lot of subdivisions, and speed is always an issue. We get complaints all the time, it on a daily basis. You know, residents and a lot of most of our speed limits are 25 miles an hour in the subdivisions. But so what'll happen is we'll set up a cruiser. We'll run the radar, and the people that we're actually catching are the residents themselves that actually live in the subdivision, you know. So I don't know where to go with it, to be honest with you. I think speed in general is a problem, but when you enforce it like we do, and then it takes all those resources off of State Route 18 and Route 3 and 57, which we get more action in those areas, especially in the commercial areas. And we're spending all the time in the subdivisions catching, you know, these alleged speeders who actually live in the subdivisions. We're catching our own residents, you know. So I just don't know where to go with it, to be honest with you.
Kelly?
Just to loop back quickly to the previous topic, I see a community forum, perhaps more targeted to stakeholders, but forming around road safety and enforcement and speed and design and all the tools that we have, because I think communities in the region are trying some different strategies. In Cleveland, we piloted speed tables on residential streets and found those to be very successful and are looking to roll them out. Would be happy to share those findings and would love to learn from others about things that are working, because we do have very similar challenges around limited people to enforce and residents that are perhaps not always behaving as we wish everyone to behave. And it seems like a cool learning opportunity with NOACA at the hub of those different intersecting pieces. I also wanted to speak directly on the Road Safety Coalition. So I've been to a couple of their meetings. It is sort of a grassroots group that's forming. It has very different sector representation. So, you know, from MPOs to cities to advocates and a bunch of people in between. And the group is kind of trying to form their specific requests at this point with input from communities. I know for Cleveland, one of our interests in being involved is we have some streets coming through residential areas that are classified as through highways in the Ohio Revised Code. And so those have 35-mile-per-hour speed limits because they are longer under the speed limit statutes in the ORC, although they are going through schools, parks, neighborhoods, et cetera. And so we receive a lot of requests from residents to sign those at 25 miles per hour, but get a little bit hung up in the current regulations. And so that specific issue, I don't know if that applies to anyone else's communities, but that's one that we have identified as really wanting to work on and increase our local control in order to set perhaps a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit on those streets.
So I just received a call from one of our council members this week regarding as State Route 57 enters into the city of Lorraine, it's a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. As it gets a little ways down 57 and then turns to 35, it's still a 4-lane highway. And so the council member wanted to know if we could change the speed limit throughout Route 57 as it enters Lorraine to 35. And I said, no, we don't have that local control to do that. We have to go through ODOT. And so I would like to see NOACA assist communities to address these local problems, because any mayor is going to get several calls every week about people speeding, especially since COVID. We saw after, during COVID and after COVID, people start speeding a lot more, or people just notice it a lot more. I don't know, but we get calls. So I think local control is important on these speed limits. And I would like to see NOACA's help in advocating for local control.
I have to say, we have this similar situation in Willoughby and Eastlake on 91. It goes from 50 to 35. And NOACA did help us with the study going through there because we wanted to calm that traffic, slow it down, especially since we're trying to create a corridor there that, so people can cross 91 safely. But at 50 miles an hour, that's a hard thing to do, 4 lanes with turning lanes. So NOACA did help us with the study there.
So it does sound like this will be something good for us to participate in both from a safety perspective and just local control.
Thanks. That was really helpful input. And, in my when I've been talking to some of the people involved in this Road Safety Coalition, they're trying to approach this in a way that's not adversarial. They're not trying to be adversarial toward ODOT or toward anyone. They just want to raise awareness and see what solutions that, would be mutually agreeable here in Ohio. So, yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else for Bev? Thanks, Bev.
Now, I just had a couple more slides and I'll be done.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to open up on that safety issue and let you all talk about that. So
Getting
I
ahead of
appreciate
myself.
that. Just another initiative is to encourage state support for making Cleveland a significant hub on the National Passenger Rail Network. Again, this is one of those issues that's both federal and state. So it's on both sides of your initiatives for action documents. So hot off the presses, a bill was just introduced a couple days ago, House Bill 488. It would require Ohio to rejoin the Midwest Interstate Passenger Rail Compact. So it's something that would really help the state of Ohio advance its passenger rail initiatives. Being part of an interstate compact with other Midwestern states would benefit Ohio in a number of ways, strength in numbers. All the states around us kind of work together to coordinate their passenger rail efforts, and Ohio has been left out of that. We used to be in the part of the compact, and then during the Kasich years, the state of Ohio removed itself from that compact. So, like I said, a bill was just introduced to require Ohio to rejoin. So that's something that we're going to be watching, and I think it would benefit the state to be part of that group.
Question on that. Does House Bill 488 have bipartisan sponsorship?
I believe so. It's Representatives Skindell and Gambari. So, yeah.
Okay, good.
So, And then just a few other things we're tracking. Again, we're supporting House Bills 276 and Senate Bill 155 in the state legislature to overturn that language that was put in the most recent transportation budget to require a interstate interchange between Medina County and Cuyahoga County. And our board passed a resolution stating that that's not the way those decisions are supposed to be made. It doesn't follow the proper procedures and processes for deciding where an interstate will be located. So we support these bills that would overturn that language. We're following House Bill 340 creates a new employer workforce mobility grant program. So we're looking at that and seeing how that ties into our van pool program and Ohio Commute. It currently, the way the bill is structured, only helps very small counties. It wouldn't help any of the counties in our region. So we're advocating that the language be expanded to assist in larger counties. And then we're looking at the transportation budget already for state fiscal years 26 and 27. Again, starting that early planning, working with partners to try to make sure that we see an increase in transit funding. We've been also supporting our communities that are seeking state funding at through a number of different programs. And here are some of the ones that we've recently supported. That's all I have. Is there any other discussion?
Any questions for Bev? Thanks, Bev.
I would just
Oh,
remind all
sorry,
of you, if your community sees a program that you're interested in, you want any assistance, whether it's federal or state for funding, let us know and we can support you. We can do a letter of support. We can do outreach with the legislators. So just always keep that in mind. So thank you.
Callie, did you have something? Okay. Thanks, Bev. Okay, that brings us, are there any reports or updates? Now on to old business. Is there any old business to come before us?
I just have a quick question about the focus areas for the committee that we talked about at the last meeting. As someone new here, it was really helpful to sort of understand what the focus of each of the committees is and how we can be helpful in advancing those. Are the final versions for 2024 posted anywhere online or after they went through discussion in all of the committees in January? Do they live in kind of the final draft anywhere?
They are not, but we can certainly have them done.
Thank you. That would be really
Very
great.
good suggestion. Thank you.
Any more old business? Okay, on to new business. Do we have any new business to come before us?
Just a quick question. I know that the Commuter Choice Awards are going to be opening and in progress before we meet again. Is there anything that we as committee members can do to help promote that or like within our organizations or broader communities? For the Commuter Choice Awards that are opening at the beginning of June. I know we don't meet again until July, so I was just wondering if there's anything that we can be doing to promote that within our communities.
Got a packet, an email that you can.
Great, thank you.
Any other new business? Okay, that brings us to adjourn. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Dale? All right, all in favor? Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law, this meeting has been publicly posted and major public media has been notified. NOACA conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. If any members feel the need to abstain from the vote due to a conflict of interest, he or she should state their intention to abstain when the matter is introduced by the chair for presentation for the record. Subsequently, that member shall not participate in any discussion of the matter for which a conflict exists. According to Robert's Rules of Order, absence from a meeting does not require a member to abstain from voting on the minutes. If a member still wishes to abstain, he or she should state their intention for the record. For the benefit of our guests from the public, in recording of this meeting, please be sure to speak into the microphone. The microphones can be turned on and off using the gray button on top of them. They are on when the light is blue. Move on to meeting minutes of January 19th, 2024. Do we have any corrections or additions? Motion, we have a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion is approved. We'll move on to subcommittee updates. Commissioner Hammercheck, although I also assume they're in the packets. All right. Bishop Maribel.
So, go ahead.
Oh, do you have any updates for the equity subcommittee? Okay. We'll move on to public comments. Do we have anybody signed in to speak? Nobody is signed in to speak. We'll move on to the chair/executive director's report. I have nothing. Grace?
I have nothing.
All right, we'll move on to action items. There are no action items. So we'll move on to presentations. We have a presentation of future action of the equity consultant from Ms. Barlick.
Oh, good morning. I'm Liz Barlick, Associate Director for Executive Affairs. I'm going to be doing a quick update on the RFP we issued for an equity consultant. This came out of the equity subcommittee work. There's no action requested at this time. This is an informational item. Previously, the equity subcommittee had adopted a strategic work plan goals. Objectives, not objections, my apologies, and actions. So here's a timeline. June of 2023, the equity subcommittee adopted their strategic work plan goals, objectives, and actions. In September of 23, at that meeting, there was support for hiring a DEI professional. At the December meeting, after a lot of discussion, a scope of services was drafted for hiring somebody. And that scope of services reflected that the discussion revealed that just DEI training probably didn't accomplish everything that was necessary. The scope that ultimately made it into the RFP was more comprehensive approach that emphasized engagement with board members and staff. So January, an RFP for an equity consultant was issued and open until February. We got 2 responses, which are currently being evaluated. We actually met with the respondents earlier this week to have some additional questions answered before finalizing who we might actually contract with. So this is the scope of work that was ultimately included in the RFP to define equity and achieve consensus on diversity, equity, and inclusion terminology for NOACA and the subcommittee. Develop a summary of communities who have historically been disconnected that would tell their stories, understand the prior decisions, and develop a plan for future engagement. Create a blueprint of organizations that can assist in this work as part of a network that learns from the community. Identify data sources and tools to use in equity work. Assist in community engagement efforts to improve public engagement and community dialogue so people can be heard and felt heard. Facilitate discussions on second and third level thinking. advanced thinking that includes consequences to eliminate or reduce complacency, assist NOACA board and staff in using their influence and platform in equity work, develop a process or matrix for decision-making to ensure equity is embedded in the work of the agency. And these are some consultant expectations that were mentioned during that December meeting that the consultant would act as a facilitator and work with NOACA staff and the subcommittee and the board. Help NOACA do its work through the equity subcommittee and work closely with the equity subcommittee to execute a strategic plan. There's no financial impact at this time. Our RFP submissions are being evaluated to select a consultant, and depending on the final contract amount, there may be further board action required.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program implementation applications from Bev.
Good morning to the chair and members of the committee. Bev Bertzloff, Associate Director for Government Affairs. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program and the applications that were submitted for implementation funding. No action is requested, no previous action. So just to back up a little, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program is a federal program that was authorized under the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. That included $250 million in non-competitive planning grants available to MSAs and states, and $4.6 billion in competitive implementation grants available to communities. So NOACA and the city of Cleveland jointly applied and received a $1 million planning grant through the program for the Cleveland-Elyria Metropolitan Statistical Area, MSA, which is the 5 counties of NOACA. So they agreed to undertake the planning to do climate action planning. So under the law, there are several deadlines. So the first one came on March 1st when the entities that received the planning grants, so in this case, NOACA and the city of Cleveland, were required to submit their priority climate action plan, the PCAP. And that's required, sort of a high level indication of what measures that we would like to undertake in our region. Then on April 1st, just 1 month later, the implementation grant applications were due. Those are optional. You didn't have to apply for funding. Then next summer, the comprehensive climate action plan will be due for our region. So Cleveland and NOACA will submit a comprehensive climate action plan that builds on that earlier PCAP that we submitted March 1st, but this will be much more detailed, more comprehensive. And then later in 2027, a status report will be due. So these are the basic deadlines, but I'm going to focus mostly on the implementation grant applications in this presentation. But to do that, I need to talk about our priority climate action plan. Again, this was submitted on March 1st. And even though it was just the PCAP, not the comprehensive plan, it's still a lot of work went into this. And that PCAP identified a number of priority measures that our region would like to pursue in order to, in line with our climate action planning. So those are things like clean electricity, building efficiency and electrification, green steel production, vehicle miles traveled reduction, light duty vehicle electrification, heavy duty vehicle electrification, refrigerants capture, solid waste diversion, nature-based solutions, and agriculture actions. So to apply for the implementation grants, you needed to make sure that the projects that you were putting in your application had to be consistent with those measures I just showed you in the key PCAP. So any project you applied for had to match one or more of these measures. And then your application would need to fall into one of 5 funding tiers, A through E, starting with the highest tier, which is 200 to 500 million, down to the lowest tier E, which is 2 million to almost 10 million. And as you can see on the column in the column on the right, the bigger the ask, the less number of grants EPA plans to make. So that was something to keep in mind as you decided how much to ask for and what projects you wanted to fund. To be eligible to apply, you needed to be a state or a municipality, including an MPO, tribe or territory that received a CPRG planning grant. So of course, the NOACA was eligible. And then they encouraged coalition applications. They wanted you to team up and with 2 or more eligible applicants to share a strong and substantial commitment to the proposed measures. So in NOACA's case, we teamed up with the city of Cleveland on an application, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. As far as scoring criteria, they wanted you they will score based on the reduction measures to reduce greenhouse gases and your demonstration of funding need, the impact of your GHG reduction measures. So you had to carefully show how your measures would reduce GHG emissions, the environmental result, the benefit to LIDAC communities, so low-income disadvantaged communities, will be strongly weighed in the application. Job quality, what kind of jobs will be created, and the programmatic capability or past performance of the applicants. Have you managed grants before? So 2 projects were submitted from our region. The one that I referred to briefly was submitted by NOACA and the city of Cleveland jointly, called Reclaiming the Forest City, Northeast Ohio Complete and Green Streets Program. And we submitted that in the lowest tier. We actually asked for exactly 9.9 million. We went as high as we could go, but still staying in that lowest tier of funding. And then there was another application submitted from the region. That was Cuyahoga County, City of Cleveland, and City of Painesville. They submitted a joint application entitled Municipal Empowerment for Clean Energy and Conservation. That was submitted in Tier B, the second highest. And NOACA was not part of that application, but we strongly supported it, and we submitted a letter of support, and we'll continue to support that. So I'll talk more about the application that NOACA and the City of Cleveland submitted, Reclaiming the Forest City, Northeast Ohio Complete and Green Streets Program. So the basics of our application are this: $7 million for a regional e-bike rebate program. And we'll be partnering with Bike Cleveland to get that up and running. 1.9 million for a regional reforestation program. On this part, we'll partner with the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. That goes back to the title of our application, Reclaiming the Forest City. This region was, known as the Forest City, and we've lost a lot of our tree canopy. And there have been some great efforts to restore that in recent years, but we still have a long way to go. And of course, trees do increase cooling in communities, and they absorb greenhouse gases. And the thinking here was to encourage multimodal transportation by giving these e-bike rebates, but also creating just a more pleasant environment for people to bicycle, walk, use e-bikes. And then the last part is 1 million for NOACA to administer a Complete and Green Streets Fund. You may recall that in 2020, the NOACA board adopted a Complete and Green Streets policy. And so this fund would help implement that policy by providing funding to green some of our transportation projects that we fund here. So our application, remember, any measures in your application or any projects in your application have to tie back to this PCAP. So our application projects address 3 of the PCAP measures: the vehicle miles traveled reduction by encouraging people to engage in multimodal transportation, light duty vehicle electrification that comes through the e-bike rebates, and nature-based solutions. And that's through both the complete and green streets and the reforestation. And I should also mention that in terms of the complete and green streets funding, that's also intended to encourage transit use too. And that can be used to create a nicer environment around transit stops. So that was also contemplated in our application. So in terms of the e-bike rebates, these would be available throughout the region. And you can see the numbers there. Just a regular market value e-bike rebate would be $400. It would be higher for a cargo e-bike, $900. $1,200 for a low income, if you qualify as a low income resident. And then as a low income cargo e-bike rebate would be $1,700. An adaptive e-bike rebate for a person with a disability would be $1,400. And then there would be larger rebates for e-bikes purchased from DBEs or retailers in LIDAC census tracts. That's low-income disadvantaged communities. So I'll just talk briefly about the other project that was submitted. So NOACA was not an applicant, but we supported this project with a letter of support, and we will continue to advocate for this. It's called the Municipal Empowerment for Clean Energy and Conservation, again, submitted by Cuyahoga County with Cleveland and Painesville. And it requested $129 million in Tier B to develop utility scale solar energy for Cleveland Public Power, Cuyahoga Green Energy, and Painesville Municipal Electric. It will replace the aging Painesville coal-fired plant. It includes solar arrays in Brooklyn, Brook Park, Cuyahoga Heights, Garfield Heights, and Old Brooklyn. And it also includes some nature-based solutions in Painesville. So NOACA will be going to DC next week for our annual visits to Capitol Hill, and we will certainly be promoting these 2 applications with our legislators, our members of Congress and their staffs that we meet with, and asking for their continued advocacy for these projects. And then we will keep the NOACA board and committees informed about any actions related to the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program as we move forward. If you have any questions, or I'm happy to entertain.
Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the long range plan from Ali.
Good morning. This is no action is requested, and this is just for a presentation. And actually, the previous action was E-NEO 2050, which was the updated of the we did it in 2021, and the board approved in 2021 is an update for a long-range transportation plan as well. So we probably, if you remember, if you were here and you remember, we had this chart a few years back. We were, at the time when we did the E-NEO, we were looking at the objectives like not investing on a moving cars and trucks, but actually investing on a moving people and goods. And that was in 2020. We started when actually the COVID and the pandemic started at the same time. And we had, so that's what you see here is the 2020, the chart, the slide shows the logo for the NEO 2050. Then we are now moving to the next 4 years, which is the next time, June 2025. And the Lego is plus or whatever we decide on this, that's gonna be, but for the future, 2040 and again 2050 for the next 2 decades. We are gonna do the same approach, is a planning approach, scenario planning approach, as you see with a Previous ones we used to have, years ago, doing the, based on the trend and that kind of thing. But recently on the planning field, we are not doing that. We are looking at the scenarios and trying to see how can we get those scenarios and how can we invest to get in the 2050 and the future scenarios based on what we have now. So what you see on this slide, the last one, which shows the 4 scenarios like before, and we are going to get there for 5 scenarios and looking at the same approach, look and see what we are going to get in 2050. But what I'm going to show you here, what has changed last few years, because the pandemic and other issues in our community has changed. And I'm just showing you the changes here. First one is we didn't have when we started in 2020, we didn't have the census. So it was based on the estimate or based on the 2010 census. But now we have got 2020 updated census, and you can see here on the left-hand side of the slide, the 2020 census population for Ohio is 11,799,448. Then for the 2050 projected population is reduced to 11,123,000. And that is minus 5.73% from 2020 to 2050. Then for in the country generally is increased by 17%. This is done based on the Population Projection Report 2023 by Ohio Department of Development, ODOD. If you search on the internet, you will see the report, and report explains this. Then we have got a map showing each county, 88 counties, whether we lose population or we gain population, and is based on the color coded, and there's a legend on the right-hand side, and it shows you when it's a darker red, losing up to 20% population, and when it goes to blue, it increases even up to 53%. So as you look at the map, the most growth are around the Columbus, and there are some here and there, but generally that 5% reduction in the population for Ohio is mainly all the counties evenly distributed, some counties higher, some counties lower. So based on this, we go to next slide closer to our neighborhood and look at our 5 counties. Our 5 counties based on this forecast is Cuyahoga County is gonna lose about 18%. Right now we have got 1.2 million based on the based on the census, but it's gonna go down for 2050 about 1 million. So we are losing about 200,000. The only counties is gonna gain is gonna be Lorain and Geauga. Geauga is the highest one, which is 7.62%, and Lorain is 1.5% almost. Then Medina, which always used to be always in the growth, now is a slightly, not change, I mean, minus 0.76% is not so it's almost the same. And Summit and Portage losing, like Cuyahoga County, the major urban setting is losing much more, about 11% of these. These are now how I looked at the report and see how they calculate this and how they forecast. This is based on, as you see, the equation on the bottom of the map. It shows base population means 2020 census, then adding resident births, resident deaths, then plus and minus migration. So that's all together for next 30 years, give us the 2050 forecast.
Ali, if I might ask, can you put this in the context of the whole state of Ohio so they can better understand why it looks like Northeast Ohio is declining?
I mean, on this map, I'm not getting your question.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about.
Well, one of the reasons there are some industries are moving to for example, Columbus, around the Columbus, and that's why the forecast is based on deployment is more people going there and residing there. So that's why we've got high number in the Columbus. But in our area, in the 5 counties, we have, losing because of some of them is I don't know, reason for this is people moving out of the county or they are going, but you can see some of the border ones, which is more rural, they are losing, and maybe that's again related to the industry, and that's the rural and the farming and all this losing population and losing the younger generation, again, based on my own information and knowledge. What I read is younger generation, when they have got parents are farming, they are not doing farming, they are moving to the urban setting and urban cities. So that's why they lose the population in the rural areas and generally impacts the whole Ohio state.
I mean, clearly what you see is the entire state losing population to Columbus, and particularly to Licking County, Delaware and Union, where you have Intel and you have Honda, which I believe just put a new battery plant there and some other things. So
yeah, the gainers are the Cincinnati and the Columbus, and the surrounding counties around that area is blue. We have actually two, as I said, Lorraine and the Geauga is gaining, but rest, Medina, but the rest mainly rural areas are losing, and generally we are losing for a state. But at the same time, US population is not growing as before. This is just a 17%, but used to be all this immigration and everything, but it still is used to be much more than this. It was, I think it was 2010, it was about 30-something%, now it's 17%. So that shows the local and the 5 counties for us. Now, the other, in terms of the going back to this is one factor changing what we have in 2020, the plan for the 2050. ENEO now changed. Another thing is the telecommuting. Before that, before the pandemic, the industry in terms of the working from home was there, and people use here and there, people used to work from home. But after the pandemic, suddenly everybody had the Zoom, had the window, team, all this in their laptop. And then when you ask for any, staff to come to the office, there was a question of, do I need to come here? Do I need to come there? So that question, then if we look at the data, and actually ACS, the estimated American Community Survey showed actually, yes, people are working from home more than before. And that, again, the peak are in the 2020 when it was the actually pandemic, everybody worked from more than 40% work from home. But then after that, gradually started coming back to the office, but it's not like before. What we used based on the ACS for our model, it used to be 2 to 4, less than 4%, but now we are talking about 11. Even for 2024, we are talking about 15% working from home. That is the work trips, which is basically is not an optional trip, is a mandatory trip, and that's important for any investment, any modeling, any looking at the future, so that you can see that is coming back, but still we have to see what happens in the future. And that's one impacting the basically VMT, vehicle mile traveled on the previous presentation, impacting the air quality, impacting the next one, which we are all now probably contributing to this, is online shopping. Again, if you see the peaks there, the graph is not is based on the data. So if you see the peak there, that's around the Christmas, around the holidays. People used to, buy the gifts or order the gifts when we were close to Christmas and close the holidays and all this, end of the year. And you see every end of the year, it was high. But on the 2020 and that time, end of the 2020, it just picked up suddenly because of the pandemic, and people purchased more, ordered more. Amazon and others are just making money and people are not going to shopping malls. And so then it goes down. But if you see the red line there, I put the red line, that shows the trend. Trend is going up. People are, they learn this technique. They can order, they can return. They don't need to go to shops. They go to the malls. They can order. If they don't like it, they put it back again in the box and send it back. So that is a trend. And now you can see the trend is going. But one thing is happening, the home base, as we call it, home-based shopping trips are going down. Maybe some trucks, but one truck comes to our neighborhood and serves 15 our neighbors, but not 15 of them going to the shopping mall. One truck serves everybody. So that's the difference, and that again impacts us in terms of the trips and daily trips we do with the shopping trips. And the next one impacting is the virtual meetings. We all now, myself and everybody, probably 90% of that on the Zoom, and we used to go to ODOT, we used to go to City of Cleveland, have a meeting. Now a Zoom is much easier and more convenient. You can work up to 10 o'clock meeting, then you have a meeting at 10 o'clock. You don't need to leave the office 9 and go to the ODOT office and have a meeting there. You can have it up to 10 o'clock. Now that again, it was before very small percentage of these trips, which we call it technically in terms of the travel demand model, we call it non-home based work trip and non-work trip. That's again, it was very small percentage, but since people have got as I mentioned, have got the Zoom in their computers and the other, virtual tools they have got. I have got on my laptop 6 of them. So it depends on the meetings. I switch from one to another. So then this increased again. By 2020, it went up to more than 50, but it's not like a work telecommuting. It's not coming down. People are going to find it more comfortable. And this is if you compare with this, with this one came down either by, happily or by force, but this one is not coming down. This is still going, and even sometimes inside the office from one floor to another, we talk about Zoom and talking and, not to go even to the, so that's again, lots of trips are done from the one office to another, is a non-home based work, again, is impacting our trips. And so what you see in the rows, the left-hand side picture shows 2019 peak hour, which is the level of service F and congestion. But I believe everybody, by the observation, experiencing the trips is not like before. Even a peak hours, because of those factors I mentioned, is not like before. Actually, the right-hand side is what peak hour, which is the level of service D, and that's every planner like myself is a wish list to see what is we invested is used adequately. Because if it's less than this, means we are wasting our money. If it's a level of service A, B, C, means there's nobody. Some people say, we invest and we don't have to have any congestion. That's the waste of money, waste of investment, because we need, the highway is different to other things. You can't pack it and put it in the fridge, and when you need it to bring it up in the morning and lie down the street. So it's there. So you have to invest it as much as you can. But if you go to the left-hand side, the picture, everybody complains that's a congestion, air quality, delay, all time is wasted. But right-hand side is the best level of service D. We don't have to ask for A, B, C, because if it's A, B, C, then the number of lanes are extra, we don't need them, and there's gonna be waste of money. So if resident comes, says, I don't wanna stop in such a roundabout, and I don't wanna stop in an intersection, well, if you don't, I've always tell them, if you don't stop there and you just Zoom go through, your tax money is being wasted, because it should be something you have to, so that's what is happening now, and that's what. So what about, this is a vehicle and car mode. What about the impact on the transit? Transit basin data we have got mainly from the RTA, and you can see again before they gave us annually data. They estimate daily transit ridership in the before the pandemic and 2015-16, it was over 130,000. Gradually was coming down, then pandemic just killed all the ridership and everybody went down and nobody used it because of the health issue. Nobody used the buses. Now, I don't know whether I have a RTA to support me in terms of what is happening. RTA is trying hard to bring back to the people to the buses and put them in the trains. But you can see it goes up, then we need, the reason why it's gone down, because based on information we have got, the investment on the buses is not enough. Again, it's gonna go down and people are gonna switch to the cars or other modes. So in that case, you're wondering why the curve goes up again. Because on the long range, previously ENEO 2050, we looked at some shuttles, autonomous shuttles, and connecting the people to the major transit hubs. That made, we kept that one, that made increasing the number of people using the buses. That's why it goes up. But still, if you look at the end of this curve and the beginning of it, still we are not close even to the 130,000. So some of them obviously is a telecommuting, virtual meetings, all this, we used to have, some people used to have come to the park and ride, put the car there and use their buses, but now the only park and ride RTA supports and have is only one, actually comes from my city, Strong. The rest are being closed down. So that's mainly, so in this environment, this is what's happening in terms of the long range and what's gonna happen 2050. Unless we support and we invest in transit, we can look at, more ridership in this. What we are doing, yes. We do it based on what officially they gave us. Anecdotally, we have talked to the people planning there, but we have to do it based on what they are telling us. So far, I haven't heard anything.
One other question before we move on from this slide. So am I understanding correctly that the trend line to current is based on actual ridership data and then forward is a projection from NOACA's modeling?
The first up to 2024 is based on the actual annual ridership we get from them. The RTA, the people in the planning section of the RTA work with us and provide us based on for each line, for the bus line. But after that, we looked at what the future, based on the conversation we had, what is good for based on the ENEO 2050, what we have to do, and that's based on that, but still is not getting there.
Okay, thank you. I am a little bit surprised to see that turn so soon, given that the trend over the last couple of years has been increasing. Of course, not to pre-COVID levels, but we are on an upward trajectory in terms of RTA ridership. And so we'd just love to dig in more in future conversations about the factors going into that trend line.
There's actually one example I give you. I'm sure Mary Beth comes here for our council meeting. Last year when they gave us data, it was data about 50,000, 60,000, something around. And actually I said to my staff, that's wrong, that can't be that low. So Mary Beth came here and I told her, I don't believe that's gonna be so low. And she went back and said, no, that's that low. But now it's coming back. So this is now the 2023 and 2024 is the ridership is going up. But again, based on our forecast, if we don't do anything, we don't invest in transit, it's gonna go down and it's gonna be, we need something to get, keep it up, going to higher. And then probably if you see that trend going down, if we keep it up, probably we're gonna get much better. But that needs, for example, one rail extension and all this, it needs investment. It was a big investment to the rail. And again, I'm not trying to advance what's planned, but if we are, years ago, we invested on the highways, I think it's now time to back and invest on the transit and rails and all this kind of modes so people keep to going to using the transit and is benefit everybody. To do that, one example, again, we are looking at this part of is looking at why people are not using transit. One of them, which if you look at our website, Activate plan, we have got for non-motorized modes like walking and biking. I've got 3 objectives. One is just from going from origin to destination or accessing the transit. The third one is just for recreational, going to the parks and all this. One of the things is the accessing the transit we're talking about. So we looked at all the stops right now, all the sidewalks, and we compare them, see where the sidewalks are missing. If the sidewalk is missing, you don't expect from residents in your community to, when there's no sidewalk, to walk to the bus stop and use the bus. There's no walking, there's no sidewalk, they're basically forced to use the cars because there's no facility, there's no infrastructure there. We are identifying those for a future investment. As it shows here, for example, you see the dot nodes is a red one, those are the stops, and the green lines are the sidewalks. And you can see we highlighted some of them in the 4th corner of the region. Those are missing, and those are the ones, you don't expect the people walk to transit. So that's the basic benefits, the non-motorized mode, walking and biking, and the transit as well. What we are now with the 2020 census, all this data I showed to you, what we are doing this year, we are spending a couple of millions on this to ask people actually what their travel behavior is. That's the one we have sent about 500,000 to almost 50% of the households to ask them to tell us daily diary, and they basically tell us how much they spend at home. So all this, based on the ACS and the nationwide data can come from this survey, can come to our region, and we can say, okay, that's not a 9%, something like, now according to the 2022 nationwide from FHWA survey, shopping online is a 9.7%. But how much is in our region? We have to ask people, and we are looking at a 9,000, 1% of the 950,000 household, 1%, to get the data from them and ask them how many days in the week they spend on the shopping online and how many days they go to work. That's gonna give us the better picture, not only more accurate, but looking at our region and is more relevant to our region and what resident in our region will do. That's why it's important. If we have sent it and we have got several thousand back, but we need to get to 9,000. And if you talk to your resident, please ask them. This is I had yesterday a call from a resident and told me, am I gonna spend all this time for the $10 I get in reward? I said, it's $10 for you, but it's $1,000 worse for us, because this is based on the planning we invest, and that's important for us. You respond to us, not just don't think about $10, $20. Think about what your impact, your question and answer you're gonna give us, that's gonna impact us in terms of the regional planning, and that's important for us to know exactly, as I mentioned, is it 9% shopping online or 15% shopping online? That's, we need to know. So please encourage your resident to reply to us, and if they have, I'm sure 50% have received this, and to tell us what their daily trouble. What else is changing compared with the 2050, compared with the previous long range? Is one of the things is the EV charging, for example. As you see there on the left-hand side figure shows how many. Again, this is based on the maybe not low, but middle ground forecast. Nowadays, because of the 2030 and the 2035, I think the government's decision to invest more in the EV cars. So we are talking about $135 billion manufacturing or spending on the EV. And actually, I had yesterday about the EV charging and all this a presentation for a design and construction in Cleveland, and they were good, healthy discussion about this. So we are looking at this. One of the changes is going to change. The other thing is not a, I'm not talking about very future. It happens that the autonomous cars and people are using the autonomous car going from home to work with electric and everything. Just one thing I have time, I just tell you, if something like 20 years ago, if somebody had told you your cell phone is going to be more stronger than your computer, most people laugh and said, no, I'm not a James Bond and I'm not going to do that. But this happened. Now you're holding a cell phone, which is stronger what some of the computers do. This is going to happen. If we can't say, no, this is not going to happen. We are going to keep going and all this. Yes, yeah, but this is happening. Nobody can, now 1960 something, they went to the moon, but that wasn't only. Now they are looking at having a vacation in the moon. So that's it's happening, and it's not happening to me, but I don't have that kind of money, but happening to some people. So one of the things I mentioned in the previous slide, talking about the transit, the autonomous shuttles, which is basically local community connected to the major hubs. That's important. In the four corners of the region, we can bring the people to some of the Warrensville hub and then downtown and near the airport. So that's going to be something which is going to be more transit, more available to residents. Is going to change, and actually, the next slide shows the major projects that actually officials in our community reacting to these changes more than we do, our planners do, and they are reacting like major projects like the one SR2 here, City of Cleveland is supporting, and the one on connecting the rail we have got going through the parks and coming to downtown, Bedrock, and the other one, I just sent the email before this meeting for supporting the inner belt, changing it These are the major projects for the ODOT is doing. And then airport, a couple of years ago, well, last year, we were involved in the modeling for looking at designing and changing the airport, and then access to airport and all this. So these are the major changes which is going to happen, and these are going to be impacting our next year's 2025, the long range plan. So it seems I talk too much, but I apologize for that. I got excited about this. So we'll continue to report this committee and the board on the status of plan updates. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Ali. Any questions?
Just a comment. So thank you very much, Ali. And this essentially helps us to kick off this 2050 update, which we will call ENEO 2050 Plus. And it is not intended to be a full-blown long-range plan development. We did that in the last one. So this is just a 4-year update to that 2050. But nevertheless, as Dr. Makarachi just stated, there still are a lot of changes from the last time that we did the plan, even though it was just 4 years ago. And we'll see what it looks like. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other reports or updates? Have any? Is there any old business? Any new business? All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Next meeting is Friday, July 12th. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Or hers are better.
I'll say 29, but it's a minute slower.
Okay, let's stand and recite the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands.
Let me see if I can read this thing. All righty, in compliance with the notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted and major public media has been notified. NOACA conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. If any member feels the need to abstain from any vote due to a conflict of interest, he or she should state their intention to abstain when the matter is introduced by the chair or presentation for the record. Subsequent. All right. That member shall not participate in any discussions of the matter for which a conflict exists. According to Robert's rules, absence from the meeting does not require a member to abstain from voting on the minutes. If the member still wishes to abstain, he or she should state their intention for the record. For the benefit of our guests from the public and the recording of this meeting, please be sure to speak into a microphone. The microphones can be turned on and off using the gray button at the top of them. They are on when the light is blue. All righty. We'll start out. I think we're missing that one part. Good. We'll start out with the meeting minutes. Any additions or corrections? So move. Second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion is passed. Okay, we have the subcommittee updates. Air Quality Subcommittee. Anybody hear from that?
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Sokolowski. I'm the chair of the Air Subcommittee. Just one thing I want to bring attention to from the Air Subcommittee is the change in the new PM 2.5 standards, lowering from, this is the annual standard, was lowered from 12 micrograms down to 9. That will certainly have an impact on our area. So this will be, because of this, we have about 3 years to come up with a plan on how we're going to be come into attainment, because this will certainly, most certainly put us into non-attainment for that standard. And just there's something to be aware of specifically. Other than that, that's it.
Any discussion? All right, move on. Transportation Subcommittee. Okay, having seen nobody step up, the information is in your packet. Water Quality Subcommittee. Nobody stepping up. The information's in the packet. Do we have anybody for public comment? All right, nobody for public comment. We'll move on to the Executive Director's Report.
I do not have a report.
You mean?
I'm saving it for the board meeting.
Oh, okay. All righty, action items, I guess, plan and tip amendments, fourth quarter state fiscal, Jim Thompson.
I'm never first, so I don't know how to turn this on. There we go. Hello, good morning to the Planning and Programming Committee. I'm Jim Thompson. I'm here to present on our plan and tip amendments for the fourth quarter of state fiscal year 2024. So it is being requested that this committee recommend the following item to the Executive Committee for placement on its June 2024 Board of Directors agenda. That is the fourth quarter state fiscal year 2024 plan and tip amendments. Previously, this item was recommended by NOACA's Transportation Subcommittee. So this diagram illustrates the process that projects go through kind of regionally in the NOACA world. So essentially, initially, there are needs out in the region. And we work with a lot of our community partners, communities, and so on to target those needs. And then we go through and we evaluate those through our project planning review process. Once that is complete, then what we do is we can amend projects to our long-range plan, or LRP. And so we essentially make sure that projects align with the long-range plan goals and initiatives and strategies. And then we can also commit resources to projects as one of the last steps before implementation. And those resources are federal resources that are essentially controlled either by ODOT or NOACA for the most part. And then that leads to implementation. So this quarter, we have 4 projects that are being considered for the plan and tip amendment. And all of this information is also in your packet, and there's a little more detail in there. The first one is an amendment to the Hilliard Road Bridge project, and the project sponsor is Cuyahoga County. And so the reason for this is the project cost has changed. Previously in the tip, it is about $42.3 million. NOACA does have a $7.5 million STBG commitment to the project, and the updated tip cost for this based on the new cost estimate would be about $64.9 million. And so being that the project cost change is above our threshold for a technical amendment or an administrative modification, we do have to take this through the full formal plan and tip amendment process. Secondly, there is the Cuyahoga Rockside Road Bridges project, which is also administered by the Cuyahoga Department of Public Works. This is the same situation essentially where the cost has increased in time. So currently in the tip, it is listed as $18 million. We do have $14.4 million of NOACA STBG commitment to this project. And then the updated cost is $22.6 million for the tip for this project. And this did go above the cost threshold and does require a full amendment. I should note that at this point in time, NOACA is not being requested to provide additional funds to these projects. The cost estimates have just increased. Next, we have the Lorain I-90 project. This is a major rehab of the of I-90 in Elyria Township and Sheffield Village. And so this has no NOACA funding committed to it. It is strictly an ODOT project. The cost has increased from about $106 million in the current tip to about $144 million, which is the updated cost estimate. Now, this is a rehab of the interstate, and essentially the first cost estimate was a planning level cost estimate. A lot of costs have increased in time, mostly due to inflation, labor costs, asphalt, what have you. And then the last project here is the Regional EV Charging Station Program Phase 2. This is a NOACA project. For those of you who have heard that we received $15 million in funding through the Charging and Fueling and Infrastructure Program from USDOT. And so the total project cost for this is $18.75 million. And so this is being amended as a new project to the plan or to the tip, and the information is being updated to the plan. So financial impacts. The Hilliard Road Bridge, Rockside Road Bridges, and I-90 rehab projects total $231 million. That amount is being amended to the plan and tip. The Regional EV Charging Station Phase 2 is $18.75 million. And then funding is committed and or planned from NOACA and non-NOACA funding sources for these projects. Primarily, funding is provided by FHWA and administered through ODOT. So then with board adoption, the amendments will be incorporated into the NOACA plan and or statewide tip in July. So the committee is being asked to recommend the following item to the executive committee for placement on the June 2024 Board of Directors agenda, the fourth quarter state fiscal year 2024 plan and tip amendment.
Any questions? Okay, I need a motion to approve. We have a second. Okay, any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. All right, you're up next again.
Great, thank you very much. So now I'm going to present on NOACA's annual priority list for state fiscal year 2025. So the committee is requested to recommend the following item to the Executive Committee for placement on the June 2024 Board of Directors agenda, and that is the state fiscal year 2025 annual priority list. Previously, this item was recommended by the Transportation Subcommittee. And then this item also includes projects which were funded through NOACA controlled STBG, Transportation Alternatives Program, and carbon reduction funds for the state fiscal year 2024 TIP, which was approved during that TIP development in December of 2022 through NOACA Resolution 2022-040. And then also the full TIP was approved in March of 2023, and that is Resolution 2023-015. So a little bit of background about this. Essentially, at a very high level, NOACA's project planning process first involves our long-range plan, which we update once every 4 years. And so our current plan is ENEO 2050. And what we do is we look at all of the transportation needs for the region through at least the next 20 years. And that is a very inclusive process with all the stakeholders, communities to provide input and feedback to get that plan then approved by the NOACA Board of Directors. Then NOACA does have its Transportation Improvement Program, which is the 4-year funding and action plan for projects that come out of the plan. And the TIP has funding, federal funding secured to it through NOACA, as well as from ODOT federally controlled funds, and then other funding, typically through transit agencies from the FTA. And then what we are doing here then is we do commit to implementing projects for the state fiscal year through our annual priority list. So a lot of that is coordinated through ODOT as well as project partners to ensure that these projects will be implemented on time as currently scheduled for that state fiscal year. So the annual priority list prioritizes funding for state fiscal year 2025 of current TIP projects which utilize NOACA administered funds. And those are STBG, Transportation Alternative, Carbon Reduction Program, and CMAQ funds. All of these projects have met NOACA's project evaluation criteria and are included on our plan and TIP at this point in time. And also staff, project sponsors, and ODOT concurs that they are ready to advance the funds in state fiscal year 2025. And they are the basis for NOACA's capital programs performance measures. So our 2025 annual priority list includes 29 projects, which total $42.6 million. This includes debt service from previously approved state infrastructure bank loans as well. Okay, so this chart indicates the way that the funding is kind of distributed based on project type, and the projects are also listed in your packet with more detail. So about half of the funding is towards your standard roadway projects, and then we have about 30% of the funding is for transit projects. Most of that is CMAQ funding for vehicle replacements, as well as funding through STBG for rail cars. We do have about $1 million for specifically bridge projects in this year. We have about $7.7 million for bicycle and pedestrian projects, which are typically through the CMAQ program, the Transportation Alternatives Program, and our TLCI implementation program. And then lastly, we do have our regional, about 3% of the funding for this year, and that's typically our air quality program, our van pool program, and our TLCI planning studies program. So this is a list of the projects specifically. They're broken down by project type. So the one bridge, and this is a SIB loan payment, these are SIB loan payments, that is for the Tower City bridges. And then our regional initiatives, which I just mentioned, are those air quality programs. And then next, the next few slides are the roadway projects, and they are categorized alphabetically by county and project sponsor. So I'll just kind of go through these slowly here. And like I said, these are listed in the same order in your packet. And I should note we do have projects represented from all 5 NOACA counties. Okay, so this is the start of our bicycle, pedestrian, and shared use list. This is our transit list. So there are 2 projects from GCRTA and 1 through Lake Tran. Okay, so any additional funds that are available in state fiscal year 2025 will be expended considering the hierarchy approved by the Board of Directors back in 2015. And so first, we seek to reduce planned debt payments. Secondly, we look at advancing future TIP projects to the current year. Thirdly, we look at funding new projects if those are ready to go in a timely manner. And then lastly, we consider project cost increase for projects that are seeking that through NOACA's project cost increase policy. So staff will present these recommendations to the executive committee in May. And then pending the board adoption in June, staff will manage the state fiscal year 2025 program to ensure expenditure of all available funding allocations. So it is being requested that the committee recommend the following item to the executive committee for placement on the June 2024 Board of Directors agenda, the state fiscal year 2025 annual priority list.
I need a motion. Second. Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, next we go to the functional classification amendment recommendation. Ollie?
Good morning. We are requesting to recommend this item to the executive committee for this consideration for placement on the June 2024 Board of the Directors agenda. And that's the revising 0.2 miles of the East 66th Street from Superior Avenue to Wade Park Avenue, from a local road to a major collector. Previously, Resolution 2020-035, which classified East 66 from Huff Avenue to Euclid as a major collector, and passed in September 2020. This is the location of this map shows the location of the 66th Street and between the Wade Park to Superior Avenue, and that's the 0.2 miles of the road. We want to change it. Request is changing from the local to major collector. Now here we have got the usual standard of the accessibility and mobility. I can give you one very clear example. For example, in the air transportation, when you go to airport and you will see access to the airplane, when the aircraft moves, then is a mobility. So there's a very clear boundary between access and mobility. So either is access or mobility, but on the highway, we don't have that kind of clear boundaries between the roads and the accessibility and mobility. That is important in terms of the safety, functionality. That's what the function class defines, their percentage of accessibility and the mobility. So if you look at the graph on the left-hand side, you start from the local roads. You see on the right-hand side, the local roads. Then you have got the local roads are mainly for access to the roads and the land use. Then if you move along that curve, which is as I said, it's not a clear boundary, the curve changes. But when you go to freeway, it's mainly for mobility. That's why it's called access control road. So that's mainly for mobility rather than accessibility. But in between, sometimes it's difficult and it's important to keep their role in terms of the highway network and street networks in the region to have the correct function, and the function classifications tries to define this role in the region. So then if you approve, this becomes the whole 66 streets. If you see on the map from the Euclid to up to the Superior is going to be a major collector. And what we are asking now, just the extension of that to the 0.2 miles of the north of it, just to add to the extension to the major collector already approved. 2014, NOACA Board Directors approved the resolution number 2014-025, and they set us 3 criteria for any function class modification. These are roadway characteristics, class network share and region and county, and accessibility density analysis. So we go through these 3 for this piece of road to show you why we are recommending this. First, roadway characteristics. Based on the criteria, we are talking about speed limit, lane width, and AADT, average annual daily traffic. And as you see, The major collector has got this 25 miles, 10 to 12 feet, and 2,000 to 8,500, the AADT. Now East 66th Street is passes 2 of 3. The third one doesn't pass parallel spacing. If you look at the map on the right-hand side, there's a 0.4 miles between the similar major collector to the East 66th Street. So that doesn't pass, but anyway, we have got 2 out of 3, so that passes the roadway characteristics. The second is the class network share. Again, I have highlighted here, circled the 8.72, and recommendation from the FHW is a 7 to 13%. So we are on the middle of this range. So we are okay. That 0.2 doesn't increase much. So that's again passes this. In terms of the county, Cuyahoga County, we are talking about 7 to 13 again, and we are in a 7.16. Again, we are not exceeding the FHWA suggested range of the 7 to 13%. So that passes too. Now we are looking at trip density analysis. We look at this based on our travel demand model. What is on the right-hand side, the slide shows the zones and TAZs, traffic analysis zones we considered. Based on that, for TAZ, looking at the trips generated and attracted, then looking at the table, but see whether it passes or not. So on the terms of the major collector, we are talking about 22,000. That's about 21,956, which is almost the minimum, and that passes too. So based on this, passing all these criteria, we requested recommendation this to the executive committee and the board for the final approval or recommendation. And that's once you approve, we will forward it to the ODOT and FHWA for further review and approval. As I requested, the action request is for the putting this 0.2 miles of the East 66th Street from Superior to Wade, from a local road to a major collector.
I need a motion. We have a motion, second. We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing that, oh,
Yes. Yes, I just had Mayor Brennan, question about this. I know that there's been a lot of work to LCI previously and additional grant funding that has been sought by the city of Cleveland, et cetera, for East 66th Street. Is this in aid of that to make this more attractive for additional, funding and investment on the street?
Yes, the development is happening, and so that's going to help us as a major in terms of the attracting fund to roads. That's going to help to have, adding the whole way through as a major collector.
Okay.
Yes,
All
that's impacted by the near future developments.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
okay. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
And all those in objection, say same sign. Hearing none, motion's carried.
Thank you.
Public Transportation Agency Safety Performance Measures Targets. Yessa?
I am too short for this microphone. I apologize. Good morning, Chair, Director, and committee members. I'm here to present on the Public Transportation Agency Safety Performance Targets. We're asking that you recommend this item to the Executive Committee for its consideration of placement on the June 24 Board of Directors agenda. Previously, the Board of Directors passed Resolution 2023-30 in last June to approve the current Regional Transportation Agency Safety Performance Targets, and this has also been recommended by the Transportation Subcommittee and previously presented to the Transit and Safety and Operations Councils in February. Public Transportation Agency Safety Performance Measures are established by public transportation providers and state DOTs to address the safety performance measures identified in the National Public Transportation Safety Plan. Please note this requirement excludes transportation systems that only receive federal financial assistance under sections 5310 or 11. The PTAS must include performance targets established in the National Public Transportation Safety Plan consisting of fatalities, injuries, and safety events, including their rates per total vehicle revenue miles, as well as the system reliability, which is the mean distance between major mechanical failures. Transit agencies approve their new targets through their annual safety plan updates and then coordinate with MPOs to set the regional performance targets within 180 days. NOACA includes the performance targets in planning processes, TIP, and long-range plan updates. NOACA staff coordinate with transit agencies and partners to update safety targets, MPO agreements, and planning documents. Lake Tran and Lorraine County Transit develop their targets through the Regional Transportation Agency Safety Target Development Methodology, while the GCRTA and Medina County Public Transit use the statistical rolling average for safety performance targets, and then all of them are focused on review and continuous improving of target setting. GCRTA has light and heavy rail and motor bus. For rail, their injuries have increased from 1 to 2. Occupational injuries have decreased both years to 6.82 and again to 6.75 per 200,000 hours worked. Fatalities, safety events, and preventable collisions have held steady at 1, 18, and 1.4 respectively. You actually want to see increases in system reliability because that means you have more distance between failures. So light rail has decreased from 7,000 to 4,000, while heavy rail has increased from 11,000 to 11,800. Lake Tran has commuter bus, demand response, and motor bus. Commuter injuries increased to 0.2 last year before holding steady. Demand response increased to 3.14 before decreasing to 2.74, and motor bus decreased to 0.21 before rising to 1.37. Safety events are at 0.2, 2.94, and 1.37. The system is getting more reliable for all modes and is now at 44, 38, and 14,000 respectively. Lorraine has zeros across the board, but it was decided at the previous meetings that we should try to encourage them to set targets. Medina injuries are increasing from 0.05 to 0.07 for demand response and 0.01 to 0.04 for motor bus, while the rates for both of those are decreasing from 0.06 to 0.04 and 0.02 to 0.01 respectively. Rates and system reliability are decreasing and increasing respectively. So once again, we are asking you to recommend this item to the Executive Committee for placement on the June Board of Directors agenda. Public Transportation Agency Safety Performance Targets. Thank you.
All righty, I need a motion. Nobody wants to make a motion? Well, I guess it died. Oh, there's one. I need a second. I got a lot of seconds. You guys. Ready, discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say yes. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, Pam, you're next.
Good afternoon. So we have two FPA modifications here for you today. The first one is in Geauga County, and it's just a prescription modification. There is a parcel of 3.72 acres in Bainbridge that we need to change the prescription from limited sewers expected within 20 years to currently sewered due to a consent judgment entry in Geauga County Court of Common Pleas. So this was requested by the Geauga County Department of Water Resources. Again, it's just changing a prescription from limited sewers to currently sewered to allow for the connection of the sanitary sewer line. So if you look at the map on the left, you can see that it's currently prescribed as future consideration or limited sewers, and we're looking to change it to currently sewered. This line right here is actually a sewer line, and so that judgment decree says they should be allowed to tie in. So we're reflecting that in the proposed map. Oops. So again, it's just a modification for that one parcel. All parties are in agreement, and this is consistent with the Clean Water 2020 plan. And as always, we'll take it through this committee as the recommending body to the executive committee for placement on the NOACA board in June. We submit all of this information to Ohio EPA. We upload to their online GIS, and then we transmit the resolutions to each of the affected jurisdictions. So the request again is modification of a 3.72 acre parcel in Bainbridge Township to currently Seward.
You beat me. Okay, a second. We have a second from Andy. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say yes. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Go, Pam.
Thank you. The second one is actually a boundary modification for Elyria and Lorco and Avon Lake Phase 1 FPA areas. It's a modification for the boundary and also for the prescription. So a homeowner has approached Avon, actually Lorco / Avon Lake, to provide sewers, extend sanitary sewers along their lane where they live to extend it to their house. So we're going to, this action would remove one parcel of almost 5 acres and add it from Elyria and add it to the Lorco Avon Lake Phase 1 and change its prescriptions from limited sewers expected in 20 years to sewers expected in 20 years. So again, it's a homeowner request. All parties are in agreement. We're going to change and add this parcel take it from Elyria to Lorco Avon Lake and change its prescriptions for sewers to be expected in 20 years. So we can see on the map, this parcel here, it's hard to see, but there's a sewer line that kind of ends right south of the parcel boundary line. And so it goes from Elyria's FPA boundary into Avon Lake Lorco. We changed the boundary over here on the right, and we changed the prescription. Once that prescription's changed, they can, when they have a minute to extend that sanitary sewer and they have the funding, they can extend it. And then when we do a 5-year update, we'll reflect that parcel to be currently sewered once it's sewered. All parties have agreed and signed off on this. And so it's really moving one parcel from Elyria to Lorco Avon Lake and changing the prescriptions to allow for sewers expected. This is a mistake. I apologize. Kessa, I'm going to be asking you to review. Thank you very much. She's offered before. It should be sewers expected within 20 years. And again, we go through the whole process. I'll make that change for the board and we move forward. So it's one parcel moving from Elyria to Lorco Avon Lake and changing the prescription from limited to sewers expected within 20 years. So the action as stated here is correct.
I need a motion.
Move to approve.
I need a second. Any discussion?
Just real quick, Pam, can you go back to the map itself?
Sure.
Yeah, so the sewer that you're referencing is not connected right now?
It is connected, but their sewer line data does not show it connected. So this is actually, let me get my pen on.
That's all right.
This is actually connected, but I don't have the detailed drawings.
Okay. All good.
So these parcels are actually currently sewered. Does that help, Mr. Dever? Okay.
Okay, Bob. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes. All those against, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Kleiber.
All righty, now we're going to the NOACA Van Pool Program update. Leah?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leah Telepak. I'm going to be sharing an informational presentation on our Van Pool program. So no action is requested. It's just for information and presentation. Previous action was Resolution 2021-050, which set the NOACA's regional van pool policy. So the van pool program's mission is to provide alternative transportation options to better connect residents to their employers. It's also to promote competitive transportation costs, reduce travel time, increase air quality, and increase social equity and economic vitality. Our van pool program has a subsidy model. Each van pool is eligible for 50% off up to 80% off. It's to incentivize and offset costs for the participants, and it's consistent with the CMAQA and FTA regulations. So to be eligible for the program, a participant must be over 45 minutes commute by public transit, or public transit isn't available in their area to get to their workplace. So if there's like 4 people who would be in a van pool that are in that situation, they get the 50% off and they're in the program. And then they can be eligible for additional 15% off for full seating capacity, or if they're coming from a NOACA EJ area. So we contracted with Commute with Enterprise on February 23rd in 2022 with an option to renew the contract annually. Enterprise offers the vehicles, which seat between 7 and 15 people. They do the vehicle maintenance, they provide the vehicle insurance, and the monthly cost of the vehicle for each van pool group depends on the vehicle type and their distance. We currently have 43 active van pools throughout the region that's serving approximately 218 riders from 8 counties and 26 cities. And just to explain the 8 counties, as long as they are coming to the NOACA region for employment, they could be coming from a county outside of NOACA. So they can be coming from Summit as long as they're coming into the NOACA region. And our partnerships include Veterans Affairs of Cleveland and R.W. Beckett. So we do outreach and marketing for this program. We have a van pool icon and display equipment, which you can actually see throughout the room today, and informational materials. We do presentations, display and event tabling. We can do one-on-one meetings and conferences or workshops. Our priority audiences are workforce and economic development centers, Chamber of Commerce, job hubs throughout the region. So a little snapshot of how we've used the budget for this program since the program's inception. It started in late state fiscal year 2022, or like mid state fiscal year 2022. So it was a little bit of a slow start, but then we really started to build in last state fiscal year. And this state fiscal year, we still have a few more months to go, and we've definitely loved seeing that progress. So for a rider, they can save a lot of money using the van pool program, average of about $650 per month for a rider. And that adds up throughout the year, of course. And transportation savings, it's taking about 235 cars per day off the road. So we're definitely supporting the air quality in the area. Reduces traffic jams, and CO2 savings. So far, about 876 metric tons of CO2 since program launch, has been saved from being expended into the atmosphere. And this is equivalent to about 1,023 acres of forest, removing CO2 from our atmosphere. There's no financial impacts. And if you know of any Chamber of Commerce or workforce in your area, this would be our contact that you would contact or have the employer contact. Our Kate Menning in Community Affairs, Public Affairs. And then next steps, we're just going to continue to grow this program, continue our coordination with our vendor Enterprise, increase our regional outreach, and maybe add on some different incentives. So that's all.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, thank you very much, Leah, terrific presentation. Just wanted to add that this is our third year of this program. And we had talked about it initially when it was approved by the board as a pilot. So we do anticipate this year coming back to you with a more thorough evaluation of the success of the Vanpool program and the costs, and with more metrics, and therefore you can decide or help us to really look at the program to determine if it should be continued, which, you know, I think it's doing very well, but we need more information to you so you can help us make that decision.
Just one question, if I could, just in regards to the 235 vehicles taken off the road. How did you get to that number? Is it just one for one? Is there an assumption it's a vehicle, or would they have done some other type of
Yeah.
transportation?
So I just know that we get a monthly invoice from Enterprise and it says how many riders are in each van pool. So I'm assuming each of those riders would drive a single occupancy vehicle. So we kind of estimate the cars that each van pool group is taking off the road that way. And then actually my air quality colleague, Ashley Dennis, she does all the formulas for this. So she came up with that value.
Okay, thanks.
Just a quick question, and maybe in further analysis, you'll provide this to us. Do you know what the retention rate is? So individuals who start with the program, do they continue? Do they fall off because for a variety of reasons? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, great question. So since the program launch, we've had, I think, 4 Vanpool groups terminate, and that's basically due to ridership. If they have a 7-seater vehicle and that includes the driver's seat, you have to have at least 50%. So that would be 4 people. So if they fall beneath 4 and they can't get more people to join, they'd have to terminate. So that's mainly the reason. And like I said, only 4 so far. So we've been retaining pretty well.
Thank you, Mayor Bobston. That's exactly the kind of feedback we're looking at coming from you to help us determine what is it that you want to see before you can determine the success of the program. And retention rate is a good one. If there's anything else you want us to take a look at more specifically, let us know either today or just send an email over.
And maybe you said this and I just missed it, but are there any satisfaction surveys among riders that we could take a look at?
So currently we haven't done any surveys with our riders yet, but that is something that we're looking to do in our marketing and outreach.
And I think it's a good tool for evaluating the program as well. So thank you.
Anyone else? All righty, moving on. Are there any reports or updates? Hearing none, are there any old business? Hearing none, are there any new business? Hearing none, somebody gonna quickly make me a motion to get out of here? Oh, good job, Mayor. I need a second and we're done. We're done.
Thank you.